It's an honor to be here. Thank you for the questions here that we're going to get to correspond back with. As we came here and our spirit came into this vessel, the vessel is something that can be put into motion, right? It doesn't necessarily have to be a vehicle. It could be a piece of paper as it falls. It's classified as a vessel, right? Something that is put into motion. Well, what puts it into motion, hopefully, is our thinking, right? We must think first in order to put our vessel into motion. Of course, when you're a child, you're in nonsense, otherwise known as innocent, right? Because your spirit has not grown to the dimensional closure that it needs to be in this paradigm to know what it's doing, right? When a child, an innocent child, just can't get behind the wheel of a car and start driving at the age of 1 because he does not have the physical nor mental capacity to keep the other vessels safe, because everything is about public safety. And so that's why children are innocent, right? And this is why there's such a feeding frenzy upon by the fiction world to thwart the innocence of a child, so they can sway them into a condition which causes a societal consequence to change the paradigm of our communities, our societies, our culture. And so the NOW-SPACE was a book, an in-depth study by me. And at the time I was working with Coleman Miller, who was really fluent in grammar. And he was looking at the concepts of grammar, and I was looking at the concepts of grammar with him. But I took it one step further, and looking at the grammar, I started to probe into what made the corporate world or the fictional grammar system in control of my vessel. And so I looked at the paradigm of shipping, because the foundation that moved my corporate vessel, which my thinking was trapped in this vessel here, my body, it was controlled by this paradigm of docking, otherwise known as a birth certificate, it was a shipping system. And so I took the grammar that I had learned and that I was learning in joint juxtaposition with Coleman Miller, because I was doing most of the studying for him on breaking down the prefixes, the suffixes, the negative words, studying the old dictionaries and looking at what made things positive in performance and what made things negative in performance. And as looking at the NOW-SPACE as a paradigm, I brought the NOW-SPACE to Coleman Miller. I said, David, this is all about NOW-SPACE. This is all about the position of your thinking in the NOW-SPACE. So I took a look and an in-depth study on the docking system and the shipping system controlled by the postal systems and ultimately by the central postal system, the Universal Postal Union in Bern, Switzerland. And I found that their charters were not articulated in a correct format, which means the methods of using administrative control was not there in the paradigm of the NOW-SPACE. And so I filed copyrights on the paradigm of shipping and the containment of grammar for corporate vessels in a position of the now. And when I sat down with the 3 top people at the Universal Postal Union on June 18th, 2003 in Bern, Switzerland, they told me, they said, Russell, you have created a paradigm that has never been looked at or considered as a jurisdictional position in the history of mankind. I said, I know. They said, you own that, you control that. I said, yes, I know. And I said, and you guys can't, I was talking to the Universal Postal Union, I said, your corporate structure can't trespass into the NOW-SPACE of the corporate venue that I will set up. And I says, that is correct. And I said, and nor can you make a ruling about me when I'm hired, when I'm fired, because I am the creator of this buoy paradigm system that allows others to function in, because there has to be some means of ways and means to navigate through communication as well as corporate structure of this docking system that I slipped into when I was born, with a birth certificate a long time ago. And so I moved outside that paradigm with the claim of the life system and created a solitary jurisdiction of corporate authorization for the now space. Well, now space is a function of a vacuum of moving concept of what we articulate through communication, as well as residual imagery of what we're viewing, right? Because we don't want to say seeing, because seeing has many traps built in the concept of the word SEE, see. In one value, it means that I'm using residual imagery to have ideas or images or concepts come through my eyes, into my brain. Another value is that I have to look through the Pope's authorization. So the word see has many multifaceted functions. So the correct word would be viewing, right? And so as we allow, or as matter moves through the vacuum of space, helped by the magnetic flux that we have that holds the functions together in the magnetism. Magnetism is only a concept in our mind, and we have to see the concept first, which makes the fact have jurisdiction over the flux of the magnetic flux, the vibration of light, the harmonics of sound. All these things, as they come in and out of our space, create a memory, create a crystalline structure that we can concur on. Like most of the audience that we have on the line, maybe not, see this Title IV flag behind me as a something that, as soon as I point to this symbol, people in their mind, because of their memory and their knowledge education, know that this is a flag, right? Some may see this as a wall behind the flag. So as we learn about matter moving through a vacuum of the now space, what I did was I created the capacity to now move tangible matter into a now tense position, to now file a claim or a command that you control that space. And each claimant that has a claim of the life with me, that is in the buoy system that I have built, has the capacity to control their own matter, and I do not get in the way of what that is, because it's up to their condition of mind, the condition of thinking, to articulate that matter and to make sure that that matter is used for positive performances for our fellow mankind. If someone were to try to take a tangible matter and put it into the now space and use it for bad against my fellow mankind, now the claimants can now make a claim that the condition of thinking was a public safety hazard or created damage that creates long-term consequences on society. So I'd like to go back to the in nonsense for a second, because the value of having knowledge and closure of the facts of the vacuum of the space. And you can even have 40-year-olds that have good volition, but they're still in nonsense because they're functioning on a birth certificate system. And there are many that try to undermine the success and the value of creating a new corporate paradigm of postal construct that are getting others in trouble, right? And so there's a lot of people saying, well, I'm an American national or American state national or state national. Well, that's foolery. This is not physically possible, because the concept for allowing that corporate claim for the United States Post Office and the Universal Postal Union, the United States Post Office ended in 1999, and the Universal Postal Union worldwide ended in 2001. So for someone to make a claim that they have a new corporate structure and they haven't filed with the correct postal construct of the now space, is only fooling themselves, and still to this day, space, maintain in nonsense. And so as we see the no knowledge, innocent beings, vessels, we can't even call them beings because they haven't even brought their consciousness or their ability to think into a corporate function to be here now. So they've got themselves in quite a pickle, and it's quite a tar pit that has been laid for communication, for setting up corporate structure, through the maritime protocols of shipping, which was the docking of that brought us here now, which captured our consciousness in these vessels, otherwise known as our bodies. But we don't want to call it a body because we want to maintain a position of movement, right? There are many different styles of body. There's a body of water, and there's a body of maybe a vessel. And so we want to be cautious on how we use these words. If they have a claim of the life and it's done correct through the correct mechanics, right? And so the correct mechanics isn't in joinder with David Coleman Miller, who is dead, because he surrendered his capacity to contract with the flag in 2006. Right? He did that in Grand Rapids, Michigan, in the middle of the courtroom during time of contract. He surrendered his capacity. The fiction government, formerly known as the United States Department of Justice, DA's office, District Attorney's Office for the state of Michigan, they are very cognizant of this. They alerted the judicial system in Washington, D.C., who alerted the World Court at The Hague that in 2006, David Coleman Miller surrendered his flag rights. When he did that, I was approached by the National Security Agency, which is a fraudulent organization, an adjective pronoun, the Central Intelligence No Agency, otherwise known as the CIA, clowns in action, whatever you want to call them, adjective pronouns. There's a lot of names you could put on those values. Those are values that don't have any value. As the Department of No Offense, U.S. Department of Defense. And they articulated me to the fact that they were cognizant that David had surrendered. And they wished that I would, but that I had not surrendered. Yes. And it was a very 3-hour conversation, very classified. There are no legal or lawful functions for those who don't have claims of the life in the correct methods to state a claim, which means to open their mouths and to be taken seriously about anything that they're saying. It's just not true. There is no president. That's just not of the United States. The United States government came out of international bankruptcy in 1999. The guidelines to elect a leader were never reauthorized. The guidelines to elect a new president or a new Congress was never authorized. A new treasury. What I did is I restructured that through the flag, because with the law of the flag, the bearer of the flag, the owner of the flag, sets the terms. That's me. The terms are in grammar. The grammar is correct communication, parsing, syntax, grammar. Performance. Well, paper itself is molecular matter, and I published, the only person that I know of have published a quantum grammar periodic table, which gave closure for positive performance on electron cloud movement. Now, I'm not going to get into the technicalities of that, but I am the first person and the only person in the history of mankind to publish a mono-atomic treaty and a mono-atomic periodic table and a periodic table, just with the regular laments, in a claim of the now space. So it was done in a way that could not be undone and moved outside the guidelines of the concept of time. So it was quite fascinating study. It took me quite a number of years to put together, but it was done in a way where it was taken very seriously by government agencies around the world, and they approached me to have very serious conversations of what this meant for mankind. Unfortunately, the people that are now openly killing citizens of the world, the banking families that are at war with the citizens of mankind, said that they planned on killing everybody, and when they get done killing everybody, they were going to come to me to make sure that I maintained the balance for their material matter, so that they could live forever. And I said, I'm looking forward to all of you dying, and I'm already seeing it in my mind. And so it's quite a thing for me to be a part of. You know, I would like for everyone to challenge themselves to take a little space to really think about the paradigm that they wish to have for their vortex. And does that paradigm include presidents? Does it include people telling them what to do and when they could, to put on a mask or to get vaccinated or all these things? Does that include that? And then think of it in a different paradigm, from a different angle. Those who are telling you all these things, think of them and their families dead. Think of them gone. And as you think of them gone, so it shall be. So it's a different paradigm to think about, different thing to consider. There's a lot of different ways to approach being a sovereign, because there's many styles of sovereign that we see out here. There's someone that is sovereign in their heart, and they say they're a sovereign, and they run all over the place saying they're sovereign, 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 or they don't have a claim of life, or they, sovereign is the power of one, right? So you never want to say you're a sovereign citizen, because it's an oxymoron, right? Sovereign is the power of one, and citizen is corporate. So that is a trap and a lie, and probably set up by many government agencies worldwide to try to get, good people, good beings to trap and trick themselves into that ideology. So we want to be cautious about how we make claim of sovereign, right? There are sovereigns that are born from indigenous tribes or native tribes, right? And they're sovereign as well. The problem with most of that is done under conquered nation status. And so they're stuck to the guidelines of their fraudulent treaties, because the treaties themselves are null and void postal-wise for indigenous people worldwide, because I took out the worldwide postal system, right? So I don't have a contract with native tribes at this point, other than the Wilstacken tribe and the First Nation tribe. I have contract with different factions within that. And I'm getting contracts, and I'm getting many native groups around the world that are getting organized in their grammar, because they have to use the grammar of their own native language, as well as got to comprehend the natives. We were tricked, I'm native as well, we were tricked into the concept of written word. Our spoken word moved because we were in harmonic frequency, and we lived in a paradigm of a different thought mechanic of manifestation, and those gifts and those tools have been taken away from us through the years. So it's a totally different position for a native that is claiming sovereignty. Then there are those that are running around saying that they're state sovereign national. Right? This is not true. These are innocent and in-nonsense people, based upon the fact that in 1999, when the United States government ceased to exist, each state was supposed to publish their own money under maritime commerce within 2 years, and no state published their own money by the year 2001. Therefore, all statehoods became placed under martial law, and that's why the spire flies on the state constitution in all governor's offices and worldwide, because the governor is under a state of war, because whatever's on the flag standard supersedes. It is a wash based upon the paradigm. They have to file paperwork, and the paperwork goes into a function of usury with a system that does not exist. The contracts themselves for corporate authorizations don't have a function anymore to state a claim, but because the grammar is fraudulent and they just have not contracted with me. Right? If they were to contract with me, then the terms would be set up, but the terms are set up for fairness for the people. For me, it's about the fairness for the people. And that's the real value, is having the humble fortitude to still, be amongst the people and be with the people. And I love just the day-to-day value of sharing, concepts and seeing the hardworking citizens of the world. Even when we think about it, you check into a hotel. The hotel doesn't function without all the good people that are frantically working and working to clean our beds, wash the walls, wash the floors, bring us morning breakfast, All those people are hard workers, and all of them deserve a hand up in life. All of them deserve, our gratitude and our kindness. Well, I was blessed with the gifts of being in the right place in the right space. And I was blessed with the gift of having the good knowledge and good memory in my mind. And the number one thing that all that knowledge that I'm very thankful and humble about is that I had the courage to do something about it. But the courage to stand my ground when everyone was laughing. And they still do laugh, right? But it doesn't bother me because I know that this technology can be given to the people that want fairness, that want accountability, that want a true system where facts are facts and value is value. And so the quantum banking system is I'm charging very hard here shortly. And in the NOW-SPACE, I'm charging very hard. And it's a good thing. I'm very thankful. It's a very humble journey. Yeah, I'm a vessel to show a different paradigm. And I've done that. And this is where why I'm not really doing a lot of workshops right now. It's more going to be performance-based. And I'm very happy about that and very humble about that. And, sad for the world. I saw some things this last weekend, like, I'm starting to see the consequences of people's choices. I was out in the public and somebody just fell to the ground and started twitching real bad, like you see on the, these viral, YouTube off, right? It was the twitch. And a good friend of mine, a dear friend of mine, called me and had to cancel on a basketball tournament. And he's a hell of an athlete, young man, and he's got heart murmurs now. And we're talking now about a guy that was, Division II All-American. I mean, just a tremendous athlete, still 25 years old, great athlete, and it just has heart murmurs. So it breaks my heart. And those of you that, got vaxxed, the space is coming. Get yourself right with whatever you need to get right with, because that's out of our control of the space. It is not connected to that one, not at all. That's a fraudulent scheme being pushed upon the peoples of the world, and it is not to be taken seriously because it's a fraud, and the banks are fraudulently moving this forward. You're going back in and making a salvage claim that you are now this function because they've only known you as a fiction. And so the volition of why you would do that is to stop and correct that which you have already participated with. So that is why we do that. Flag flown upside down, maritime signal, any flag, for distress. And so it's one of the things that I studied in the late 90s, coming out of Montana, where a group of people flew their flag upside down. They were about to get bombed by the National Guard, and they flipped their flags upside down, and by doing so, the National Guard stopped the bombing and came in to talk to them because it means that there's distress, there's something not right, there's stress in the situation. There are no common law courts. It's all contract. And he was engaged in usury in his contracts, and he checked himself into his motel, otherwise known as his jail, and he gets to agree to the checkout terms, which is whatever they want, because it's martial law, and courts are closed. Yeah, things are happening, materializing quick. You'll see that very short in a way. There's a lot of timelines that have been made by different matters and different, I don't know if you want to call them spirits, energy, but those are materializing as well, and all of it converges kind of in the same space. But then when it comes into the space, then it gets the quality of corporate structure for grammar, for putting the condition of mind or the spirit on trial, right? So these are techniques that are very dangerous and very fun all at the same time. So you have to be careful on your thinking, because you're thinking, and you got to be careful that the technocracy world does not influence your thinking. Where the technocracy world is now really starting to affect some of the thinking out here. So you're seeing bizarre things happen where people are short-fused and get into fights real quick, and are losing control of their faculties of emotion based upon the technocracy of the 5G and the vaccines and the things that are in them for programming subspace. So it's a wild thing, and you got to really hold your concepts in check, and hold your thoughts in check as well. And unfortunately there's a lot of remote viewing and a lot of crazy things that the clowns in action and different agencies are doing to try to influence things. So we have to be cautious of that as well. Well, they'd have to come through me because I'm the guy that has the flag, right? Because the flag sets the terms of contract, number one. Number two, they have to become accountable for all the things that they did. And only a few, there's only a few out here that the fake presidents from 1999 forward to this space, they need to be held accountable for their scrupulous ways, whether they were in nonsense or whether they had knowledge. There has been genocide that has created a global terraforming of the world based upon fake presidents' choices to rush to war over fraudulent means and fraudulent things. There has been fake presidents that have armed other cartels around the world, and those weapons have been used against citizens of other countries. A lot of nefarious things. There are fake presidents that have operated a vaccine war against us, right? And vaccinated, and now we're seeing the people die all over the place that need to be held accountable. So there's a number of things of accountability, but please comprehend the leader and the fake presidents are only puppets for the families and the private money behind the vested military ventures that are allowing this to happen. So the military is on point with this. They're way ahead of all of us. They're ahead of the sub-programming of space and the programming of and what they allow through and what they don't. And so you got to comprehend, they don't work for any governments and they don't work for the people. And if you go to different and watch different, well, if you have the knowledge, you get the clearance, you can go and watch different military events. And in those events, they will tell you that the main movement of their concepts that they forward upon the people is the private money, the private capital that comes in as vested interest to manipulate the military leaders to control the military puppets, which are the employees of the military underneath them, to put these bad ideas and concepts in play that create damage, discord, and create the agendas of this death cult that they have functioning right now globally. So we are with the claim of the life. We're about the life, and we're not about the death cult. So it's kind of it's a different paradigm, and it's a good shift, right? So if you want your life and you want to have freedom of your own choice and your own thought, and you get to learn about all the technocracy and all the things with the claim of the life and how to move your values and your things out of it, and then have the courage to stand there if a fiction does try to come into your now space and articulate correct on how to move them out of the way. You got to remember, somebody owns everything. Be very cautious on what you trespass on. Well, I went down to Mar-a-Lago on August 13th, 2021. Yeah, August 13th. Yeah, I was playing in an NBA cash tournament down in Delray Beach, so it's real close. So I just stopped in. And they're pretty dumb. You got to comprehend from my perspective and the position of knowledge and his attorneys, they're very dumbed down. Now, at the top, you got to remember, Trump is pretty stupid. If you take a look at the guy and you look at his actions of thinking he's a president and how they moved him out of Washington, D.C. every 44 days, making sure that nothing he did became law, you know what I'm talking about. His attorneys, when I identified that, were pretty upset about how dumb they really looked. They were upset that they thought there was a country. They were upset that they thought there was a court system. They were, we're talking to children, innocent children that are dangerous because they thwart their ideas upon the general public. as a public safety hazard in a man's world, right? Or a woman's world, right? So I don't want to say man, but in someone who has the courage to stand up and say, no, thank you, I'm not going to take your lies. So that could be man or woman. I'm not trying to be a sexist in any way, but I'm just saying that there are those of us in the world that have the courage and the knowledge to back what we say. And we also have the strength, some of us. And when that strength comes up against their weakness, like a Trump or whatever, one of these weak actors, they fold quite quick, right? Because they just don't know anything. They're pretty dumbed down. So that's why we have the leaders that we do and that they have in their positions right now, is because they're not very, even though they're maybe smart in one specific theater, like Trump is really good at bankruptcy and his attorneys are really good at merging bankrupt and managing bankruptcies. That's why they never finished the wall, because they made more money on the back end, right? Because they knew how to make the money there to not complete the project. So these are guys that aren't finishers, and that's why they're put into position, so they can't ever finish a task. So it's a totally different paradigm. So it's not that Trump doesn't recognize me, it's that the quantum system doesn't recognize them because they don't have any power. The United States government ceased to exist in 1999, which is the main problem for anybody trying to be a president, is that there's no government. People need the value, the people are the freedom, and the people need the freedom. And the government need to get out of the way. Well, I mean, it's massive. I would go back to the videos and watch lastflagstanding.com, warcastles.com, watch the documentaries. Go back in and watch at warcastles.com the Reno workshops, right? The Reno seminar when Dave died, and look at all the authorizations that were put in place long before all of you figured out and even knew about quantum grammar. Performances were complete, and they are still complete on this moment. To figure out the shipping meritocracy of the world, and it took me down many ventures and many paths that I had to go walk through and perform to make sure that there was a system in place for the people. And so before you judge me, look at the sacrifices, look at the condition of my heart, and look at the meekness of my journey and the happiness all in one. Thank you, guys.